Yo, this is RetroWolf88 and today I want to tell you about a game on the Nintendo Switch that I have been very addicted to as of late, and that game is Moonlighters. So why don't you be sure and hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and let's get into Moonlighters on the Nintendo Switch and why I am completely addicted to it and recommend that you check it out. So Moonlighter's been out for a while now. It was released back on November 8th of 2018. You can buy it digitally for $24.99 or physically for $34.99. In Moonlighter, you are not the hero. You are simply a shopkeeper. So by day, you run your shop and you sell things to the various town folks. By night, you're going into the dungeon so that you can get more inventory for your shop. So there are really two parts to this game. There's the dungeon diving part where you go into a dungeon, you avoid traps, you fight enemies, you fight bosses, you loot treasure from the enemies, treasure from treasure chests, all in an effort to get inventory that you can then turn around and sell into your shop, which is the second part of the game. You're running the shop, the Moonlighter, and trying to make a profit and build your shop up better and better and better. So as a result in this game, you have a very satisfying gameplay loop that you just keep repeating over and over. Gameplay loop being, go into the dungeon, try to make it as far as you can, come out of the dungeon safely, stock your shop up with stuff you want to sell stuff to the town folks, try to make as much money as you can, as much profit as you can, so you can build up your town and build up the shop and make it better and better so that you can make even more profits and venture further and further into the dungeon. With that being said, with there being really two main parts to the game, let's talk about each part in a little bit more detail, and we'll start with the dungeon diving. So in Moonlighter, there are at least 4 different dungeons to dive into. I've only made it to the second dungeon. There may even be a 5th dungeon yet, I'm not entirely sure, but there are at least 4 dungeons. A dungeon consists of 3 floors. At the end of the first 2 floors, you fight a mini-boss, and at the end of the 3rd floor, you fight the main boss of the dungeon. Throughout each floor, it's kind of set up similar to the old school Legend of Zelda games, the top-down games, like the first game, the Link to the Past on Super Nintendo, where you have this dungeon made up of separate rectangular rooms, and within each room, you have enemies, and you have stuff that you can break, you have pits to avoid, treasure chests to loot, and you don't have to make it through every room in the dungeon. You simply have to make it to the boss, the mini boss or the main boss, and defeat that boss. However, if you want to acquire a lot of inventory for your shop, then it's best to explore the full dungeon, because you get materials and loot from killing enemies, you get materials and loot from treasure chests, and there are actually 2 purposes for everything that you find in the dungeon. Number 1 is to sell it in your shop and make money. Number 2, there are some materials that you can use with a blacksmith and another vendor so that you can get things like new weapons, new armor, get various types of potions. You can enchant your weapons to make them more powerful. So you got to kind of decide, okay, what do I want to sell and what do I want to keep for this next upgrade? Now, I will say this. The game's pretty tough. It's not Dark Souls tough, but it's pretty tough in the beginning. Once you upgrade your armor, and once you upgrade your weapons and make them more powerful, then it begins to become a little easier, because the enemies, they hit pretty hard in the beginning. They're pretty tough. Once you learn their patterns and their weaknesses and find a weapon that works good for you, then it's not so bad. Speaking of weapons, there are many different kinds of weapons in the game. You've got sword and shield. You have a broadsword, you have a spear, you have this claw-like weapon, you have a bow, and there might even be one more, but I can't remember. But each weapon has its own feel, its own range. Also, each weapon has a special ability that you can use. So there's really a lot of variety in the combat depending on what weapon you choose. You also have a dodge roll that you can use to dodge attacks. You can carry 1 potion at a time that you can activate with the press of a button. There's kind of a risk-reward system in the dungeon within this game. And what I mean by that is if you die, you're going to lose all of the loot that you've accumulated within that dungeon. So you have to decide, okay, do I want to try to push through and make it to the very end of the dungeon, or do I want to escape with the loot that I have now and store it safely? Because whenever you escape the dungeon with the loot that you've accumulated, when you go back into the dungeon, you got to start over from the first floor and try to fight your way to the third floor and the boss. So there's kind of a risk-reward system there, because there are some situations where you can't escape the dungeon. So like if you make it to a mini boss and you just have all kinds of just great loot to sell or keep for upgrades, and you die at that mini boss, you just lose all of it and you have to start over again. So you have to be very careful, and if you're really trying to grind for loot to sell at your shop or to make upgrades with, it's best to quit while you're ahead and escape with the good stuff that you've acquired so far. Now, in the beginning, you only have access to the first dungeon. Once you beat it, the second one unlocks, and so on and so forth. Like I said, I've only made it to the second dungeon so far. The difficulty ramped up quite a bit when I made it to the second dungeon. That's the dungeoning aspect of the game. Let's talk about the shop aspect, because it's really, really cool. As I said, the stuff that you acquire in the dungeon, you can take into your shop and you can set up to try to sell to the local townsfolk. So you can set your shop up and open it whenever you want. You can set the price for all the goods that you sell, and when you open the shop up, the customers will start coming in. They'll look at the stuff you have for sale, and they're gonna have like an emote that will pop up in a little cloud above their head, and that's gonna tell you how much they like the price that you set for that item. So if you see a very angry face, or you see a disappointed face, you know you've set the price too high and you need to drop the price some. However, if you see a really happy face or a really, really happy face, then you know you might have the price a little too low and raise it a little bit. And then, you know, you got to find that good balance. You got to hit that sweet spot for the price to where the item is appealing for the customer, but you also make maximum profit. And you can change the prices on the fly while the customers are in the shop. You can also stock new items if somebody buys something. In addition to all that, in your shop, there's also thieves that come into the shop, and you can spot them pretty easily. And when they come in, they're going to grab something, and you got to run, chase them down really quick, and hit the left trigger, and then you'll beat them up and you'll get the item back. But if they escape the store with that item, it's gone. So you got to really be on your toes and watch out for those thieves. Now, the stuff that you can do with money besides upgrading weapons, upgrading armors, getting potions, there are a lot of shop upgrades. So as you upgrade your shop, it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, allowing you to stock more and more items in the shop. You can also upgrade various things in your shop, like your cash register. You can make it more fancy, which makes you more likely to get a tip. You can upgrade your bed and your room behind the shop to where when you sleep at night, you'll wake up with bonus health to go into the dungeon with more health. You can upgrade various aspects of your shop, and you can also buy decorations to put in your shop that will give you various bonuses. And in addition to that, you can hire more NPCs to come into town, like the blacksmith and the woman that sells potions, and there's a few other NPCs that you can hire to make the town more popular and build the town up. So what you have here, as I said, is a very, very fun gameplay loop of go into the dungeon, make it as far as you can, get as much loot as you can, come out of the dungeon, upgrade your gear, upgrade your armor, your weapons, get better potions, upgrade your shop, upgrade the town, sell stuff to make more profit, rinse and repeat. And ultimately your goal is to try to defeat all 4 dungeons and that final door, which is either a 5th dungeon and a final boss or just a final boss. I'm not quite sure yet because I haven't made it there. And even if I did know, I wouldn't spoil it for you folks. I can highly recommend Moonlighter. It's a really good game. The graphics are really good. I love the pixel art in the game. The music is really good. The game has a lot of charm, a lot of humor. The gameplay is fun. The gameplay loop is incredibly addicting, as I said. I'm just in love with this game, and I can't recommend it enough to you all out there. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure and hit that like button because it helps out a lot. If you haven't subscribed, please be sure and subscribe as well, and share this video with your friends and family and help us reach our new goal of 1,000 subscribers. With your help, I know we can do it. If you've played Moonlighter, leave me a comment down below about what you think about the game. Tell me what you like about it, what you don't like about it, whatever you want to say about Moonlighter, just go for it in the comments down below. Until the next video, keep playing games and having a good time. Later.